This is Election 2021, the Las Cruces City Council Forum for District 6. Thanks for being with us. KRWG Public Media has partnered with the League of Women Voters of Southern New Mexico to present these events. My co-host from the League is Bobbie Green. District 6 candidates are William Beerman and Yvonne Flores. Our rules today simple. Candidates have 1 minute to answer each question, and they should not mention an opponent in their answer. Bill, we're going to start with you for the first question. Why are you running for City Council?
Well, I'm 73 years old and I'm retired. I'm a former internal auditor and newsman, and I have a pension that pays my bills. So I asked myself, what's the best use I can make of my remaining productive years? And the answer was a no-brainer. I'd like to help turn back the wave of socialism that's sweeping the country and help take back America one town at a time. And I think the Las Cruces City Council is a good place to start. We have 6 progressives on that city council. They vote in a virtual lockstep, and I think we need some balance.
Thank you, Bill. Yvonne.
Thank you for the question, Fred. I am running for re-election, and I'm running this time for the same reason I ran 4 years ago, and that's because I love people, children, and animals. Children are people, but I have a particular place in my heart for animals and children. And prior to serving on the city council, I practiced as an attorney in California, still a member of the state bar, and was also an educator at Cal State Northridge and Cal State Sacramento. Given my experience, I believe that I bring that wealth, and after 4 years, or almost 4 years, there's a lot that I've learned. There's a lot to city government, and I enjoy it, and I want to continue to bring more programs, projects, and complete my goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Bobbie.
Councilor Flores, what experiences have contributed to your qualifications for City Council?
Oh, precisely what I mentioned in the last answer. Having been a professor at the university level, and also was a substitute teacher for Los Angeles Unified School District for several years when my kids were little. And so those skills, being in the classroom, being with youth, being an attorney, and also being a community organizer of sorts. I worked with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta in the San Joaquin Valley in the early 70s through the late 70s, organizing farm workers, and served as legal counsel on the Migrant Legal Services Corporation that we formed. So I bring a wealth of experience. My 3.5 years, almost 4 years being on city council also has given me a lot of skills and a lot of tools to work with from here on. Thank you.
Mr. Beerman, same question.
As an old school newsman, when we used to follow standards and ethics, I covered dozens of municipalities, their mayors, their city managers, their city councils, the political forces involved, and the public input. And I learned much about city government. And later, as a certified internal auditor, I reviewed thousands of audit findings about mismanagement in government. I also learned decision-making methodology, which I think would help resolve a lot of the problems that we have in the city regarding decision-making. And I would just like to say that I think I have a very well-suited background for a city council position.
Bill, we're going to start with you on the next question. What is the role of city government in addressing poverty? Explain.
Well, this city enjoys a great climate, and it's a university town, and it can attract a lot of retirees here. And I believe that the city should do what it can to help attract retirees, such as keeping taxes low and possibly eliminating the taxes on retirees and Social Security recipients. We're advocating that the state do so. I think the businesses should cater to this source of revenue. When someone retires here, they sell their home and they bring the proceeds from their home sale and their life savings here to spend. And they should be able to spend it in the economy, not on city taxes. And the city should refrain from getting involved with businesses in areas that they really don't understand, like telling a business how much to pay its employees.
Thank you, Bill. Yvonne?
Could you please repeat the question, Fred?
Sure. What is the role of city government in addressing poverty? Explain.
The role is monumental, and that is basically based on Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. The whole foundation of a community, a democracy, is based on the city providing for its residents. So I feel very strongly that the city has to do many, many things. It's not just a question of providing money, which I'm very happy that we have the Telshore Fund and that we have other places where we do contribute to 501c3 organizations. And nonetheless, I believe that economic development is a big place for us to start. And sitting on the, actually, I don't serve on the board, but I'm a liaison to the Airport Advisory Airport Advisory Board, and there's a lot going on there. Mavita, I chair the Economic Development PRC Policy Review Committee.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. Bobbie.
Thank you, Yvonne. What is your opinion about using general obligation bonds for affordable housing, and why?
I think it's a great idea, and I'll tell you why. The reason is because general obligation bonds, especially if we move from the cycle that we're in right now into our next one, taxes won't go up. We're cycling out of the GO bond that we passed a couple of years ago. And by the end of 2022, we'll have an opportunity, or maybe in the coming year, have an opportunity to pass another GO bond. And affordable housing, I like to call it attainable housing, Bobbie. And the reason for that is because affordable may be something, it's very subjective, or it's ruled and controlled. And so attainable housing would be more available to the majority of our people here in Las Cruces who are at the poverty level. Median income is $40,000. No one can afford a $300,000 house unless you're retired and come from another part of the world.
Thank you, Yvonne. Bill?
I recently heard a real estate developer testify at a public hearing that it is impossible to build affordable housing given the cost of building materials and labor. Now, when I was young, I bought my first house because it was a triplex. It had 3 units in it, and I used the income from the other 2 units to help pay my mortgage. So maybe the answer is to build multifamily housing so that the cost of each unit is lower, and that could be a way to address the housing problem. And I'm not sure the city should get involved beyond that. And I'm not sure particularly that we should be floating bond issues to pay for public housing. And I can't give a really good answer to this question without doing a good study of what the actual objectives are. We need to all agree on what the objectives are, and then we have to review all of the alternatives for achieving those objectives.
Okay, Bill, I'm going to start with you for the next question. Do you believe the city police department needs to make any more changes with regard to use of force policies? Explain.
The police department is the one department that we would keep if we could keep only one. The city has plenty of money, and I think the city should spend what it needs to spend to have a world-class police department. And that would include continuing professional development training in various aspects of the job, including de-escalation of confrontations. And I think once we build a world-class police department, the officers will be so proud to be part of that department that there will be peer group pressure on all of the officers to carry themselves in the way that reflects well on the department as a whole. We won't have any officers harming the reputation of the department by engaging in improper activity, because the other officers will act as a curb on that.
Thanks, Bill. Yvonne?
Repeat the question, please.
Sure. Do you believe the city police department needs to make any more changes with regard to use of force policies? Explain.
Yes, I do believe that the policies have to be reviewed and the practices have to be looked at once again. Recently, the Department of Justice granted the city of Las Cruces, the Las Cruces Police Department, almost $190,000 to look at their practices and to get everything in shape. What a couple of other counselors and I have been doing is looking at precisely the practices and where they can be ameliorated. And it does come down to funding. I strongly support funding the police department to its fullest. I believe that paying police officers $15 an hour is atrocious. And these are conversations I've had with the city manager, independently of meeting with my colleagues. So yes, I feel very strongly that all of this has to be looked at, re-examined, revamped, and they need more funding. Thank you.
Bobbie.
Yes, my question is for Yvonne. Do you support a citizens review board to examine police department actions? Explain.
Yes, I do. And what the city has done at this point is I believe there has been a community review board in the past, Bobbie. I'm not entirely sure when it was. What the city has done is hired consultants, and the acronym is OIR, O-I-R, and they addressed the city in May, and they're looking at police practices now. And in this, I believe, is in lieu of a citizens review board. These are objective. These consultants look at objective data, and they'll come back to with a report soon. I believe it'll be November, November, before the year is out. So yes, I do think we need a citizens review board, but it's good also that we have consultants looking at our practices. Thank you.
Mr. Beerman, do you support a citizens review board?
I think incompetence is a pervasive problem in government. And I'm afraid that if we have a citizens review board for the police, we'll have incompetent people on that board instead of professionals who understand the pressures on the police and all of the rules and guidelines that the police have to follow. And I believe, well, there already is a review board for the police made up of state police who are knowledgeable about the field.
Okay, Bill, we're going to start with you for the next question. How should the city manage the development of the recreational cannabis industry?
Well, the politicians created a monster when they legalized marijuana. And they did it to get the votes of the marijuana smokers. The Center for Disease Control says that marijuana smoking is harmful to people under the age of the mid-20s because their brains are not yet fully developed. So I think since we have legalized recreational marijuana, we need to make sure that we have severe penalties for people who allow the drug to get into the hands of young people. So, and we also need testing. When someone is driving under the influence, the police have to be able to determine that. And maybe also in other circumstances where someone gets into a conflict with police.
Thank you, Bill. Yvonne?
Repeat the question, please.
Sure. How should the city manage the development of the recreational cannabis industry?
The industry. So we are in the process of developing an ordinance to regulate how businesses go up from micro businesses on up. So insofar as management, that would pretty much cover that by zoning laws. And we're doing that now. Thank you.
Bobbie?
Yvonne, what are the strengths of city government?
The strengths of city government are many. The best, I believe, is the fact that the city does have a community outreach administrator who focuses entirely on communication from the constituents, from the residents of the city of Las Cruces. And she monitors all this, and we get all that input. We also have a lot of community meetings because of COVID. We haven't been able to do that. And the strength of city government is to have the input of anybody and everybody in the city who must participate in the development of the government because it's by, of, and for the people. Thank you.
Mr. Beerman, what do you think are the strengths of city government?
The city has 1,600 employees, and it has a budget of $500 million a year. So these resources can be used to do much good if they're properly managed. And that's not always been the case. And as we know from the state auditor report that said violations of laws, regulations, and policies were rampant in city management. So I would like to see the city establish a world-class internal auditor department that can not only oversee city management and make sure that they're operating with utmost economy and efficiency, but it can also serve as an advisor to city managers who might have difficult problems that they're facing, and we can get the most value out of every dollar that we spend.
Bill, for the next question, what are the weaknesses of city government?
Well, I think I just alluded to one. Actually, I believe there are two major weaknesses, or maybe three. They would fall into the categories of corruption, socialism, and incompetence. In my dealings with the city, and I already mentioned the corruption aspect, the state audit report, but we also have had 4 city employees sue the city saying they were fired for reporting wrongdoing. And the city paid $1.4 million to these employees to settle the case and had them sign non-disclosure agreements. Now, as regarding socialism, there are too many examples to mention. I'll just mention the proposal for guaranteed basic income, the defunding of the police, the proposal for fare-free buses. We have buses riding all over town with hardly anybody on them.
Thank you, Bill. Yvonne.
What was the call of the question, Fred? I kind of
What are the weaknesses of city government?
Well, conversely, it's the opposite of the strength of city government. Without community involvement, we can't address all the needs of all the people. We know where some of the needs are, and we're addressing those. And we're doing the best we can in that regard as a city council and as the administration of the city. I think the weakness is, Fred, frankly, is that we don't have enough people participating. We might get a letter to the editor once in a while. We might individually as city councilors get an email from a very upset constituent, but as a whole, we don't really come together, except for our specific boards, and they're limited to 6 people. But yeah.
Okay, Bobbie.
Yes, Yvonne, how should the city work to foster economic development?
Thank you, Bobbie. That's a very good question. And the city right now is in the middle of getting industrially based economic development. Yes, it does help our local businesses very, very much. And I support that entirely as the chair of the EDPRC. And with our local businesses doing well, we all do well. That's GRT that's generated that goes up to Santa Fe, and we get 1/3 of all the GRT that's generated in our city. And we are looking at, I also sit on the Airport Advisory Board, and we are looking at expanding. Andy Hume is doing a fantastic job expanding the airport, and we're headed now, by the end of next year, I believe, we'll have commercial passenger service in interstate. So that means that we can keep our money in the state by flying to Albuquerque and then connecting from Albuquerque to another city or another country.
Thank you, Yvonne. Bill?
Would you repeat the question?
How should the city work to foster economic development?
As I said earlier, the city should cater to retirees who can sell their homes back east or back west, wherever they're coming from, and come here with thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars that they got from the sale of their homes, as well as their life savings. And they can spend that money here. And we should make sure that they're not taxed to the point where the city is siphoning off their money instead of having their money go into the economy. And businesses can develop their businesses to cater to the retirees.
Okay, Bill, we'll start with you with the next question. The city has recently asked for tax increases to fund capital projects. Would you like to see the council find ways to use current funds rather than asking for tax increases? Explain.
I was astounded to hear the city is considering raising taxes. They are already wallowing in money. In 2015, the city manager said the city needed $70 million to carry it through to 2030, and the city council passed a tax increase of $140 million, thus giving itself a $70 million trust fund. Meanwhile, even though the real estate tax wasn't raised this year, the city still collected $11 million more just from growth, 11 more in real estate tax. And now they have a $25 million windfall from the federal government in the form of the so-called COVID relief funds. So I think that the city should economize. It should consider cutting back all of the areas that it's gotten into that aren't necessarily traditional municipal functions.
Thank you very much, Bill. Yvonne?
The question is about raising taxes by the city?
Yes, by asking taxpayers to fund capital projects. And the full question is, the city recently asked for tax increases to fund capital projects. Would you like to see the council find ways to use current funds rather than asking for tax increases? Explain.
So those are two basic different questions. One is, am I for tax increases? The other is, can we somehow use current funds? I'm for tax increases, and the reason for that is because taxes are for the benefit of everyone. And it's in the Bible. It's Leviticus. I mean, it says there, you have an acre of land and you parcel off a little bit and you give to whoever needs that. So I'm a very strong believer of that, and I tithe, so I feel very strongly about that. However, as in terms of taking money from moving money around in the city, that's another ballgame altogether. And we've looked at it very carefully. There's different funds, and there's just guidelines and accounting principles that we have to abide by. So that I would leave to our budget and our finance department.
Okay, and that wraps up our forum today. Thanks to our candidates, William Beerman and Yvonne Flores, and of course, Dr. Bobbie Green of the League of Women Voters of Southern New Mexico. For KRWG News and the League, I'm Fred Martino. Thank you for joining us for Election 2021, the Las Cruces City Council District 6 Forum. Have a great week.